Hi, I'm Hill Coons. I don't know if I'm supposed to say my name. I am arguing that capital punishment should be abolished. The main reason for this is very simple. It is a terrible return on investment. There is no evidence that suggests that the death penalty actually deters crime. Multiple studies have been done, but none have found that there's any proven correlation between the threat of death penalty and crime prevention. Rather, it's the threat of being caught that prevents crime more than what the actual punishment would have been. So functionally, as far as preventing crime and keeping society safe, which should be the foundational goal of our judicial system, the death penalty has no function. And it costs an incredible amount of money. A 2014 study done by the Seattle University of School and Law found that death penalty cases were 1.4 to 1.5 times more expensive than non-death penalty cases. This is not just true in Washington, where that study was done. A 2003 legislative audit in Kansas found that death penalty cases were 70% more expensive, averaging at $1.26 million. And that's consistent. Millions it costs. Across the board, millions of dollars. In Jasper County, Texas, they actually raised property tax by 8% to pay for a death penalty case for the murder of James Byrd. They raised property taxes for taxpayers to pay for a man to be put to death, even though functionally it doesn't prevent crime and it doesn't keep anybody any safer than him having life in prison. Not only that, but it takes so much more time. The Kansas Judicial Council found in 2014 also that the death penalty case took 40.13 days on average compared to 16.79 days for non-death penalty cases. This amount of resources and this amount of time that we are spending as a society paying for this stuff could be funneled into things that actually prevent crime, that actually speed up the judicial system, that make our judicial system better, that make it fairer, that make it faster, that make it more accessible for people, that make prisons better and reform. All of that money that we're spending on something that doesn't functionally do anything could be used for something that is purposeful. I think a side of the argument that a lot of people overlook, or rather an argument that people make for the death penalty, is that it's morally justifiable, simply that the people deserve it. Didn't Jeffrey Dahmer deserve to die? Yes, he did deserve to die. Jeffrey Dahmer deserved to die. But it's not a moral thing. It's not, did this person deserve this? It's not an eye for an eye. Oh, they killed this, but they deserve to die too. That is not what the death penalty means, because that is not the context it exists under. It is the government. It is the United States government killing people. The United States government kills people. We kill people in war. Cops. If you got cops in a standoff with someone, they're shooting at them, the cop shoots them, the streets, busy people are running, oh my God, there's blood everywhere. The difference is, the United States government should kill people when it is to protect safety and protect the country. And I'm not arguing that the United States government does this, by the way. I'm not saying that they do that they succeed in that. I'm not agreeing with their policy or their warfare or their tactics. But that is what the point should be. It should be they are killing people to keep society safe, to keep the country safe. If a police officer shoots somebody who's shooting back at him in a standoff, that is to keep them safe, to actively on the streets, to neutralize the threat. In the instance of the death penalty, there is no threat to be neutralized. That threat has already been neutralized. And it is equally neutralized if that person has their life in prison versus being put to death. And it's cheaper. The United States government should not be in the revenge business. It should end. The judicial system should end at keeping society safe. It serves two functions, or it should serve two functions: rehabilitation and keeping society safe for those that cannot be rehabilitated. Once society is safe, that is where the buck should stop. Because who is the United States government to say this warrants death on principle? On principle, this warrants death. The United States government? Because if you came to me and you said you murdered somebody because they murdered your mother, I wouldn't be mad at you. But if the United States government, no. because it's not a perfect world, because the United States government isn't a perfect place, because the United States government does not have a monopoly on morals, and how they do not know who is the United States government to say how low you can stoop before you deserve death? There is not justice. Our judicial system is filled with hatred and racism and classism and inequality, and it is completely rotten from the inside out. And you know what you can't walk back? Death. That's one thing that you can't walk back, because you can release someone from prison when you find out they're innocent after 20 years. The very least you can release them, but you can't undead somebody. They're dead. There are many cases just like of just that happening, of people being put to death and then realizing after the fact, oh, they were innocent. Most recently, Marcellus Williams in 2024, he was executed for the murder of Felicia Gale in 1998, and after changing testimony and a lack of evidence, they realized that man didn't do it. There was no evidence. There was no physical evidence at the scene. The testimony changed. Oh, he was put to death for nothing. They killed him for actually nothing. He's not the only one. Nathaniel Woods in 2020, Carlos de Luna in 1989, Ruben Cantu in 1993. The list goes on, trust me. Not only that, but there's racial disproportionalities in people who are being tried and sentenced for the death penalty. They found that deathpenaltyinfo.org, which is a very trustworthy source, I did look into it, had statistics that showed that since 1976, 75% of victims that have been involved in death penalty cases, the victims of the people that were tried and then put to death, 75% of the victims were white. Disproportionately white cases where there were white victims were viewed as more severe and more deserving of the death penalty. And within that, since 1976, 34% of inmates on death row who have been executed have been Black. This is a disproportionate number because interracial crimes that are that violent, especially murder, are actually incredibly rare. So not only are white crimes being tried or crimes with white victims are being tried harsher than Black victims, but Black perpetrators are being tried and sentenced harsher than white perpetrators. And this is true across class as well. With a good lawyer, you can get away with anything. I mean, Jesus Christ. It is not a perfect world, and therefore you can't have a perfect system. It costs more, it is ineffective to preventing crime, and you cannot undo death. Who does the United States government have the right to kill? How do you know they're right? How do you know justice is being tried? Abolish the death penalty.